Hello and welcome to GARcast, where we talk about all manly media from the past to the present. With me, I have Tom
Hello.
and Alastair,
Hello.
and I am Elena. And on this first episode, we want to talk on how we got into the genre and why do we like it. And to explain the name of the podcast, Gar is a term similar to Moi, of a deep admiration of witnessing something very manly. And well, instead of cute girls doing cute things, it's manly men doing manly things. It has its own term. And so, why do we like it? Who wants to start? You two guys.
Um, I can start, I suppose. Like my first introductions to it, really, I suppose, like looking at things like bebop. It's like sort of uh, followed some of the idea of it, but like when I first really got into it, it's with like probably most people, like Jojo, and it was just
Mm-hmm.
both a sort of reassuring thing and a lot of fun thing as well, because the idea of being manly here is very much like a very culturally ingrained thing. Like if you're not
Yeah.
a very manly person and you're a man, well, you're sort of looked at a bit oddly. So like with JoJo, and well, anime in general, seeing this really manly anime, sort of like, oh, who I am and what I like isn't necessarily completely different from what I would expect to be, and manly animes are a really good sort of meeting ground between two things, both the culture here and
Mm-hmm.
what I like and what I enjoy.
Yeah, I have to agree too that I think JoJo's Bizarre Adventure was for a lot of people a sort of step
Yeah.
into this world again. So, and how about you, Alistair?
The same kind of. JoJo was definitely something I had interest. Me and old high school friends constantly meet up and watch cheesy action movies from the 80s, like Jean-Claude Van Damme. So he's super
Mm-hmm.
manly and that kind. So it's definitely like an aesthetic, maybe you might call it, that I like.
Yes.
Admiration definitely is a word that would fit. Um, But yeah, it's a lot like with Tom. It's kind of ingrained here that if you're not as manly as so say a recognized standard, then it's a little you look down a little bit, which is basically where my admiration for it comes from, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, it is interesting to hear. I never sort of thought of it. Well, in my case, it's sort of the same. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure from the 2012
Mm-hmm.
adaptation was a gigantic throw into this world. But of course, before that, I was also very much into 80s and sort of action movies. And I also had an interest to sort of read Visit of the North Star or Berserk, what I call who I would call very gar in that
Just
regard.
a little bit.
Um, I don't know, probably.
Probably.
And yeah, sort of, and this was sort of the jumping off point when everything escalated, and I sort of looked into like older, like 80s OVAs and manga, sort of to see what they have to offer. Because it's sort of one could say an aesthetic of the past. I think it's now coming back with all the remakes, but I think it's something that it seems very out of time,
Mm.
or at least was.
Well, especially if you look back to, like I said, the 80s action movies, it does come off as cheesy, which
Yes, it is.
dates it. So I think there's definitely that element. And if you look at obviously the movements of what's popular, certainly in anime, it's obviously become a lot more of like the moe, that kind of thing. But we do get things like JoJo
Hmm.
and Berserker, though obviously that's not gone too
We
well this
don't
time.
talk about.
We're getting more Lupin again, which is like good stuff like
Oh
that.
yeah, more
Oh
Lupin.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
a
it's
sort of
a lot.
uh, sort of like 5 episodes of L'Avventura Italia,
Mm.
and really liked it. It's a very lovely art style to it.
Well, they've just announced another movie. I think it's coming out next year sometime. And sort of the same style as L'Avventura Italiana, obviously, sort of following on from that. But there's going to be a few movies and OVAs likely,
Oh, nice.
just building off
Lovely.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, so that's good. Yeah, about the aesthetics again, I found a very lovely interview of Hirohiko Araki, the mangaka of Jojo. And he said when he was asked about part one, what was his idea behind it, and he said, well, he always liked sort of Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he asked himself, well, if they would fight, who would win? Sort of what is a man? How strong can they get? And what if suddenly one of them is immortal? And he ends this whole paragraph that he says with, well, basically it's just macho guys beating up each other, really.
Well, you see that like through a lot of his stuff. Like he draws a lot of influence from those sort of same action heroes from those same cheesy 80s movies. Like Jotaro is directly inspired by Clint Eastwood, and to that extent, Clint Eastwood sort of fell in love with him a little bit. He's got this like same portrait of Jotaro, in the same pose as him and stuff like that.
Oh, that is great.
Yeah, it's a bit like with Kenshiro from Fist of the North Star being based off Bruce Lee. And obviously, Fist of the North Star being heavily inspired by Mad Max, it's got this weird infusion of Bruce Lee films with Mad Max.
Well, you go back to those sort of late 70s, 80s, like Asian kung fu films that like you sort of you can only find like half decent dubs online, never anything else, and just that like really rapid fire fighting style that you see in a lot of them, like a lot of the fighting scenes were like sped up to an extent to make them seem like even more fantastic, and like that carries on obviously into Fist of the North Star, but then there's that same like slow plodding pace or like a Mad Max film with the same environment and sort of same style moving between different tribes or whatever, different places.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. Also, the sort of very fast attack rushes that he has, like, also come into it. The it's perfect. So, yeah, we could say that the cheesiness is a factor of it that you're also looking for. Because I think if you really take this genre too serious, I think you end up with a lot of these hyper-violent OVAs that are just not fun.
Yeah.
We're just looking at a gallery of violence, sort of like, well, yes.
Oh, yeah, like, you go back through 80s OVAs, and there's a lot of ones that just sort of like, they sort of fall flat in the end. And because they don't have anything holding them up aside from this, very violent edge. And it's a medium that, while it can definitely take itself seriously and have its serious moments, but it needs to have a very specific identity sort of unto itself. It's like, take a look at, once again, sort of Jojo. It knows what it is. It knows when it's needs to be funny or when it needs to play out a scene, but then it can also be very, powerful at times. It has those moments of, emotion for the characters. It doesn't restrict them to just being these manly walls of meat, which is
exactly. They're not fighting machines. They're sort of they're human.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happens. I cried a few times during JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, like a few times in the first and the sort of part 1 and 2, and then the whole Stardust Crusaders, which is like an emotional adventure as well. We could make a bridge that to the subject of manly tears if you want to, which is a thing I very look forward to. I think manly tears is, well, to me at least, it is a sign of showing that now it's serious.
Yeah.
Because if you have, let's say, any series, and you have a girl crying, you say, oh man, that's sad. But it's also, I would say, not cheap, but, well, for example, Kyoto Animation has turned it into an art. Have a girl crying and then everybody feels sad. But it sort of happens and is in the genre. But if the very muscular-bound guy starts crying, it's serious.
Yeah.
Like, this is about to be very emotional here.
Yeah, when you've got a man like Kenshiro, who, other than when he's fighting, is pretty stoic, and he starts crying, you know something's fucked up.
Yeah. And also, there's this. I don't know why, but it sort of rings sort of very personal to me. But I cannot see men cry. So it is sort of something that immediately is. Oh no, that is sad.
Well, it's like being in the same room with a whole bunch of people, like your friends, and it's like I remember like a friend and I can't remember what it was for. I was around at his place. Oh, we'll watch a film. What are we gonna watch? Oh, I don't know. I've heard this film's good, and we put on like 5 centimeters per second, and we finished that, and it's just like neither of us are looking at each other. It's like okay, just hold it together. Everyone knows what's going on and sort of how to feel, but it's just like you got to stay strong at the same time. The tears are for really important situations.
Mm. I think yes, it is. But also, one could say that it is another sign of manliness to just show emotions, because which is something that I notice in very much a lot of modern anime, or let's say something like light novel adaptations, is that you always have these characters who are like super nearly edgy, like serious, and don't show emotions at all. And I would say then I would rather prefer the guy who punches stuff and cries about it, or something
Yeah.
that sort of has a lot more emotional punch behind it,
Well,
instead of just
it's
somebody
like
who's just very stoic.
the problem with a lot of the light novel series is it's this idea that people have of making the situations look effortless. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
there's these really cool, suave characters who are doing whatever, and they shed no tears, they shed no sweat. They don't even, have to be paused or stopped at anything. Nothing's holding them up. And having that, even just a mental hang up in the back of your mind, or something that you are actively, working towards, or have that's driving you, that emotional and sort of like layering edge, is a good thing to have.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes the character feel like less of a character that's on a screen and more of a character that you might actually meet somewhere. No matter how
Yeah.
strange and bizarre their appearance might be, it's all about sort of the human beneath that. The human beneath that is Jesus.
Yeah.
So, you're not going to be running into that anytime soon.
Yeah. So I had a very great sort of example of that. That was the Fist of the Blue Sky, which is the prequel to Fist of the North Star, which is placed in the 30s of I think Japan, and it's about Kenshiro's father, who's also Kenshiro, and sort of his life. And he was part of a Yakuza clan, and then he quit. And now this funny thing is, this anime starts at the point where he has sort of found his own life, but he is now a university teacher. But the thing is that his design is still sort of very manly aesthetics, which means that you have this 2-meter, 6-foot guy in a suit with swirly glasses who reads while walking, who just wanders like that through the university, and of course bangs his head on all the doors because he's too tall.
Well, you think back to like Phantom Blood, and it's all these people in this like fine Victorian dress, and like these dainty, banisters of the era, and they're like colossal. They don't. They've got these like really like angular faces, like not something you'd see in a Britain of that time. Yeah.
Well, it's like with the first little time skip in Phantom Blood, where it goes from Jonathan and Dio being boys, and then when they're completely ripped, like a few years later,
the space of an episode,
and in the anime where it cuts to them playing rugby, and they're absolutely massive.
Well, it's not just them either; it's everyone. And
everyone,
it's not just the team; it's the spectators as well. It's just
everybody gets buff. Yeah, and so I had a lot of fun with it when a series sort of hints at that it's not super normal, that it sort of has this rift with the normal world, and it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and to go back to Fist of the Blue Sky for 1 second, there's one chase scene which then happens from the campus to somewhere else, and there's also just one other teacher who has like this tiny, tiny car, but of course Kenshiro is too tall to fit into this car, so he just climbs on top of the roof, slams his feet through the roof, and then stands on this roof. Then go! And he said, "Oh God!" And you see just this guy behind his wheel with this big indent around him of his feet.
Wow.
It was a beautiful scene because then you see this tiny car just pootling along with this huge guy standing on top of it. It was beautiful, a sight to behold.
Yeah, it's things like that when you can tell their series isn't taking itself too seriously, it's nice. Like you said, it's nice when, while it can be grounded in some kind of normalcy, have some elements that are just show that it's all there for the fun.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's sort of like I'm trying to think of what to say. It sort of also comes back to the author, like what kind of story do they want to tell, and like you're looking at something, say like another probably like quite Gar show or Gar old OVA of like MD Geist. It doesn't necessarily have that element of fun put into it, but it's one of those so bad that it's good kind of things. Have either of you seen MD Geist?
I haven't seen MD Guys, no, but I've seen OVAs like that, and it's
Things like Dark Cat and things of that sort of nature.
So I went through my anime list once, just for the fun of it, meaning through the bottom tier ones. I just wanted to see what are the lowest rated shows ever, and I think Dark Cat was somewhere.
Yeah, Dark Cat.
I know that it is
not
on my
good, but it's
on my plan to watch.
It's enjoyable enough into its own right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought it was just from the cover of it more like delinquent story, was it?
Like
or what is it about?
That's the style of the characters that they've used, but like what's Dark Cat about? It's like they fight these satanic horrors.
Okay.
And it's just it like sort of tries to do this mystery stuff, and it's just it doesn't work.
It fails.
Yeah.
Well, and but it has another sort of beauty in it that is so bad that it's good. Just when a series just runs straight forward into a wall, laughing. But I also had sort of another idea about the aesthetics, if we want to, because something I like mostly about manly series is that everybody sort of gets an overhaul. Like, as we already said with Jojo, where everybody gets buff, but mostly as well with female characters. Sort of what always is a sort of a problem with, let's say, like light novel series is that female characters are just there for decoration, or just to be badass for a few seconds, and then just to be a damsel in distress again. But I think in mostly like manly series that I witnessed, so female characters were badasses as well, or at least not girls, but they're women, which I very much liked.
Yeah, into their own right, they're a strong character. They're not just. I mean, Araki, like in Jojo, gets better as time goes on. He tries to do it with Lisa, and then doesn't really give her enough time of being the badass to properly do it. But come part 4, part 6, so on and so forth, part 7 especially with Hot Pants. But I'm very
there's more room. Looking forward to part 6.
Part 6 is a great time. Yeah.
I'm still stuck in part 5,
Oh,
which I'm reading.
I'm one of the few people alive that I love Part Five. I notice there's things wrong with it, but like people
Yeah.
point to these things and like say like Part Four or Part whatever, and they're like, oh, this is good, and then like, well, look at it, it's better in Part Five. Like the group dynamic that's in Part Four, it's in Part Five, and it's like even better. And then people are like,
Yeah.
oh, Part Four, Six, like these really creative stands. I'm like, look how well they're used in Part Five.
Oh yeah, no.
But like
The stands were definitely what got me through part 5.
oh yeah, like
Certainly.
the fights as well, like the White Album
So
fight or the
good.
Talking Heads fight. They're just so
Yeah.
creative and so like they're so tense. Like they are, especially like ask anyone who's read JoJo, and everyone agrees that like the Grateful Dead fight is just so clever
Yeah,
and
totally.
just so intense, and they're drawn out for like so many chapters that it's such a I don't know, such a joy to me to carry things
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, sort of. I'm stuck in part 5. I don't know why, but I think just another series came around, probably some Fukumoto series that I just had to read. But I intend to continue part 5 because so far I really had a lot of fun. I think I'm
Yeah.
somewhere behind where they have to take care of the girl. Somewhere around that after the boat. I don't know why, but the boat scene just I really liked with this very creative stand. I don't know what it did, but it had a sort of a timer on his head.
Oh, the one that
I
could
think
play back
it
moments in
counted.
time, yeah.
Yeah.
That things like that.
I think the other thing with part 5 is you do see it a bit at the end of part 4, but because of how Araki's style changed so much to more of this flamboyant kind of style opposed to his style in part 1 through 3 and the beginning of part 4, is that the stand designs become a lot more interesting. Certainly for me.
Yeah,
Like,
definitely.
there are some good ones. Obviously, like Killer Queen is great, but I can't remember exactly when the style changes in part 4. I know it's a gradual thing.
It's about part 4, and then back at the start of part 5, he brings back in a bit of sharpness to the drawing again, because towards the end of part
Yeah.
4, things get very soft, which is fine. It works for part 4, but like part 5, like I said, things get quite sharp again, and that really works in part 5's favor.
Yeah. But yeah, no, stand designs from onwards from part 5, I just adore them because I think that was probably when I was sold on stands. I think like a lot of people, when it suddenly changes from Hammond to stands, it was a little bit jarring because it's like, okay, understanding what this is now. But no, I think once the designs get a lot more interesting in part 5,
yeah, you get
it becomes
things
a lot
like,
more entertaining. And obviously, because like strategy's always been what JoJo's fights are about. It's here's something with an ability that can do whatever. How are we going to beat this? That's always what it's been. Certainly, it's action. It's not just can we punch this enough to beat it.
Like I said, like
punch it until it talks no more.
and like
Yeah.
part 5's fight is sort of the first time you see a lot of back and forth in the fights. Like you have these characters or multiple characters on one team. Like you have Giorno and Bruno or Guido working together against one enemy and sort of circling around. Like I said, the pinnacle of that I think is like the White Album fight or the Grateful Dead fight, just because of how much.
Yeah.
Man, now I want to read it. Because I really have to.
Like, while I do love part 3, if you compare certainly the stands, like all of them, certainly the main group, they all have quite a similar stand, apart from Joseph with Hermit Purple, like Abdul with whatever the name of it
Magician's
is, the
Red.
big chicken, Magician's Red,
Yeah.
and then all of them, they all kind of they're in some way brawlers, and you Kakao in with the Harem Hunter Greens generally firing something, but they're all kind of the same. But then you look at part 5 where you've got such a diverse array of different abilities.
Well, you have Aerosmith, and then you have Purple Haze, and then you have Moody Blues, and each one provides sort of a different thing. Different thing. Like
I think I also like the just the main protagonist, like Jono's ability with I think was just objects coming to life, if I remember correctly. Was it?
Yeah.
thought that is a very creative thing to work with. Just
That's probably one of the problems
I
with
don't
Part
like
5. It's not used
God damn it.
to the best it could really be used.
Mm.
It's still it's a really interesting ability.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah, so, but I'm very looking forward to it. So to just start reading it again. Because I had a lot of fun. And I'm also very much looking forward to Part 6.
Yeah, I think you'll really
7.
like Part 6.
Mm.
Part 6 is definitely your thing. It's...
Yay!
No, Part 6 also has, like, once again, like, really cool stand designs. They get a bit more humanoid again, but, like, just things like Stone Free, they have their own sort of air of personality about them, each one. Things like that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if I have the PlayStation 3 game, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All Stars.
Oh, yeah.
You can fight with all of the sort of main protagonists and sort of the side characters together.
I've got that out too.
Wonderful. And I like Jolene just as a character. Just playing in that. So this has been my only introduction to her so far, but I love her.
Yeah. There are a lot of weird and wonderful characters in Part 6. It's certainly an interesting one.
Yeah, she was also voiced by someone very famous in the game, but I completely forgotten who it was. Just one of my friends who's very much into voice actors who played this game with me just immediately went crazy and said, "That's her!" I immediately want her for the anime. Just I probably have to look it up again, but I also liked her voice in this game. So very strong, and I think they sometimes even took like voices from the video games and then made them into anime voices. So sort of cast them. Because I think so. That happened with a few of the Part 4 people.
Maybe.
I think.
As far as I remember.
I think they did it for Koichi from memory. The voice lines they had from him in game and like menus and stuff, they chose that guy. I don't think they chose Okiyasu though. I think they got a different person for that and things like I don't know. I can't remember. I don't pay enough attention to voice actors. I'm a bit bad on that front.
Coming back to some manly series after our little detour over Jojo. Have you watched anything recently, just from the genre that you are very excited about, or just want to tell? Or just for our listeners as well, because I think just the sort of the manly genre is inherently a very nerdy genre, because it's not something that is sort of very much talked about in a lot of mainstream sort of anime or manga media. It's sort of something that you have to dig for, and then someone just recommends you something, and then you go, oh yeah, I just want to watch it. Yeah. So, what's your things that you have watched recently?
Well, there are two notable ones. The first being Violence Jack, the 3 OVAs.
Oh yeah.
And the second being Kaiji. For Violence Jack. Violence Jack is originally a manga series by Go Nagai, the guy who created Devilman and Mazinga, so he's very highly influential guy.
And Cutie Honey as well, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Cutie Honey, and had some work in Getter Robo. But no, Violence Jack it's kind of a lot like Fist of the North Star in its setting, because it's like a post-apocalyptic. It's very Mad Max-like, and it's the character of Violence Jack is this massive, like probably bigger than Kenshiro. He's actually a giant,
even bigger.
Probably a giant when you see him. Although there is a varying in how they drew him in the OVAs, and it's essentially him just wandering and doing menial tasks to beat the people who it's a weird one, because it's each of the 3 OVAs generally focuses around one like gang or cult, generally causing some kind of havoc, and leading up to Violence Jack being persuaded to essentially kill them to save whoever they're harassing. So the first one, there's
okay.
like these two villages who are pillaging and raping all the people in like camps around, and Violence Jack is summoned by both sides to take out the other, but ultimately decides to kill them both to save the people. But
That's sufficient.
the main
That's good.
the main issue with Violence Jack is that his character is so varying in what his motives are. Like certainly the second OVA, it starts off and he's this stoic, brooding character who just wants to go about his life, and he's got this really suspicious air around him, and everyone's saying, "Oh yeah, he's a mad killer." Then, as he's roped in, he kind of just does it because he wants to kill, and he's like becomes this mad beast. And then by the end of the OVA, he's very much like Kenshiro, this very highly moral hero, and it's this weird variation that it makes it quite difficult to really get him as a character. But the OVA in general, or the OVAs, they're a hard one to watch. Because while there is action, there's a lot of sex. It's a lot of sexual violence, and it's difficult.
Oh goodness!
It's really, and it's like it's not just implied; it's full on. Okay, it's difficult to get through. But if you want,
I heard this about all of Go Nagai's work.
Yeah, like
that
if
he
you
sort of
want
has both of it.
Schlocky, hyper-violent fun, there are elements of that in there, and they are very fun. But the rest of it is pretty difficult to get through.
Understandable.
But it definitely draws from Mad Max. But the interesting thing with that, and I was talking with Boris on Twitter about it, apparently the manga was created before Mad Max, despite the anime having this very obvious Mad Max vibe to it, which is something that makes me want to read the manga, even just to see what it's like, to see if that vibe's still there.
Yeah, it's good to hear. It's always interesting when sort of a piece of work just predates another one,
Yeah.
Which has a similar theme, and sort of have a look at them and just compare them.
Yeah.
Which is sort of interesting. And the other one was Kaiji, as you said.
Kaiji, yeah. No.
Which I'm very happy about because it's one of my favorite series.
I loved it. Absolutely adored it. The thing about Kaiji, well, certainly in the first season, its scambles, is that a lot like Jojo, where it's kept fresh throughout by having different abilities, because the games in it are all of Fukumoto's creations. Things are always kept fresh through just having different games that you've never seen before. It's not like it's all poker or it's that kind of gambling casino style games. But the other thing is, something I noticed throughout, is that the challenges Kaiji has to face in it, the mental challenges, are varied. So in the first one, in the rock paper scissors, it's him trying to outwit a large number of people in order to win the stars he needs to get his freedom. In the I don't know how you describe it, in the next one where the metal bar going with a high rise, like that's more like a physical like a personal thing he's got to overcome in order to.
Yes, it's sort of, it has a theme of being alone.
Yeah.
And sort of having mental strength.
Man, that was a tough one. I teared up a few times in that one. That was difficult. And then the next one is him trying to outwit someone in a game that is rigged, but also he's playing against someone who's very proficient in the game, who, what it seems like he can read people, but as you find out that the game is rigged. And then obviously the final arc is Kaiji rigging a game in order to get back at Hyodo, is that his name?
Yes.
But it's just so good. And the way it creates tension, it's impressive. Every element works to create tension and intensity, from the character designs, the music.
With Kaiji as well, it sort of folds back onto earlier, is there's a bit of back and forth while, our boy Kaiji comes out on top in the end. It never feels like he's got the entire game in his hands, at least until
Yeah.
the end. He has to
No.
play for it. He has to work for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's sort of the ultimate underdog in this case. He really has to work hard for him to win.
He has to work hard. He has to think hard. He has to, be sensible. He has to,
Yeah.
I guess what I also liked about him is that he is just a super emotional character.
He is, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you have this whole range that you can just see on his face, and I absolutely adore it.
Well,
Just when he's happy, he is happy. When he's sad, he is sad.
Yeah.
comes from the Fukumoto style, though, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
It's a very emotive style, and I'm glad they kept that through to the anime.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Otherwise, it wouldn't have. That wouldn't have quite as much.
Sort of the emotional punch would be lacking, I would say. Just I also love it just when things get intense or something that the whole screen just becomes wobbly, which is like the same way just Fukumoto sort of draws very
panels
intense scenes.
Distorted in some way because the character designs, like he does that a lot in Kurosawa.
Yeah, strongman.
Yes.
When Kurosawa gets stressed and sad, the panels show that, and I like that. Not only does the character design become super pronounced as to show that he is sad, the panels as well and the setting around him just match it. It works really well.
Yes, it especially does. I found this very lovely documentary about Fukumoto once, which is also on YouTube if you want to look at it, from the English NHK a broadcaster. And he said that his style is sort of very much, you could say, Picasso, where everything's just very angular, but sort of very expressive. Like, it's not about realism or making things pretty, it's about this raw emotion.
Yeah. Yeah, despite...
And it's exactly this.
Regardless of how aesthetically pleasing that is, it's to show this raw... either whatever the emotion he wants to convey is, and he can show it pretty well through this art style. Which I do like about art, that when it can do that, creators. So, like, Taiyo Matsumoto, creator of Ping Pong and Attack on Concrete, his art is incredibly powerful in its portrayal of emotion. That's something I can really admire when a creator can do that.
Yes, it is. And and if you have now watched like series 1, you can go into series 2 if you want to with Kaiji, because I love it a lot more. I love both seasons, of course, but season 2 has a sort of added bonus of, I don't know if it's correct my information there, but if I remember correctly, there was also a live action adaptation of Kaiji as a film, which you absolutely should not watch. It's awful, except if you just want to rage at a screen like I did. But somehow that made a lot of money, and apparently that money went into season 2.
Oh, right, that's good.
Through some form of like copyright right thingies, and like. It has a beautiful production quality as season 2. You will immediately notice just the whole character animation just gets a lot better. Everything is a lot sharper, has like thicker outlines, and of course the soundtrack, which is by the same composer again, just is stellar. I really love like season 2.
Oh, I feel a bit sorry for you because got a loop in the third live action film and it was okay. Like, well, the 2014 one, there's a couple of them. And it was okay, but yeah, the same thing. It's why L'Avventura all'Italiana looks so good, and everything that follows so as it does, because it's all just it made a whole lot of money.
Well, if it was for a good cause, I mean, we can excuse the terrible films.
Yeah, no, I had seen... I think they've got an Akagi one as well, isn't there? Is that like a live-action Akagi?
There's a TV series, which is
I think
also
I've seen
on Crunchyroll. While I looked at it. But I still want to write something about this, because I think just the whole architecture is wrong.
Oh, right.
It's sort of hard to describe, because the last main battle, which is also still strange that they just adapted the last battle and nothing before that, which is also very interesting, and just seeing how Akagi's character works. is that this last battle takes place in sort of in the manga. I don't know how it's in the manga. I just have to look it up again. But in the anime, it's this such big, huge mansion of the bad guy that they want to take down, which is sort of everything is made out of marble. It's like very high rooms, nearly church-like, and everything just like really dark and expressive. And in the TV series, the live-action adaptation, it's just his living room. So it's just a very normal living room.
Yeah.
It's just carpets and one table and I think couches in the background. And I think just it loses so much of this punch.
No, that's definitely something that the show did with, I think, well, obviously with the first arc on the boat, everything is really grand and magnificent. You know the people running this have money. They don't have anything to lose.
But then again, like the city on the boats, it's got like a lot of shadows. It's not, it's quite dull colors. But the setting in Kaiji of each arc is a character unto itself, and that's a great part of it. Yeah.
I guess it is like it just shows how important settings are. Just I don't think that sort of Kaiji would have had the same punch if it was in just some random hall somewhere.
If it was
just this idea of being isolated on a boat just is so much.
Well, not only like by yourself, but with all these other people in a similar desperate situation. It's it sets up a really good thing. It's not just everyone's in some casino and if we win, we lose some money. Whatever. We'll go back to Vegas next weekend with a bigger check. This is tense situation. There's not just Kaiji here. Everyone's going to play to win. Everyone's going to be playing hard, and like I said, it's the setting into itself as a great character and a great part of it.
That's what I loved about the end of the first season of Kaiji, where Kaiji's trying to rig the game, but Hyodo decides to ramp up the bet to 100 million yen. But because Kaiji only has 20 million to play with, said, each of your fingers is 20 million. It's just the stakes go up, and obviously the arc before that with the ear drill thing.
Yeah, I rarely cringe at things. And I have a very strong stomach for horror and stuff. I love horror films or something, but just the idea of getting your ear inside of the eardrum hurt.
Yeah.
Just it's sort of idea that she goes like, get away. So it's a very visual thing to it where I think just like nobody wants that.
No, I'm a pretty. When it comes to like these things and shows and like animated stuff, I'm fine. But in real life, I'm very, very squeamish. I faint at the sight of my own blood. There's some great stories I can tell probably once this is all done, because they're not entirely podcast relevant, of me just wimping out completely at some point in my life. But yeah. No, it doesn't sit right in my stomach, but I'm able to sort of get through it nicely in the show.
Tom, do you have a manly series? Just if we have talked about Kaiji a lot.
That I've recently watched. Well, I'm recently going through Kaiji at the moment, so I won't talk any more about that because I went through it a fair bit recently.
Sorry.
It's all right. Recently, in terms of manly series, I suppose I watched The Cockpit fairly recently, which was it's a 3-part OVA set during World War II with different focuses in each episode on pilots, and it's these men's struggles in each different one, each one sort of from a different perspective. I think the first one's a Luftwaffe pilot, and part of it sort of contending with doing all these things, and can he live with himself, and would he be better to kill his own blood brothers and so on and so forth for the better of the world. And it that's an interesting thing. And then the other episodes after that probably aren't quite so powerful. There's one, there's the one after that I think is on a suicide pilot, a Japanese one as well, and the last one I can't remember. But like they're very strong, decisions from the point of a man at that point in history, and It's an interesting lens. I think they do a decent job of it. A lot of people seem to thought it was pretty meh, but I thought it was good.
Hey, it sounds already like a
Yeah.
very interesting concept.
And I suppose recently I also saw the pre-airing OVA for Drifters, which is airing next season.
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah, no, I need to check that out.
it's the same mangaka as Helsing, if I remember
It
correctly.
is, yeah, and the anime has the same director as Jojo.
Oh right.
Oh,
Yeah,
well that is good.
it's it's I don't know. The OVA was pretty so-so. It introduced these, Japanese, Chinese historical figures. Oda Nobunaga's finally a man again after being a cute girl in several anime recently.
Poor historical figures,
Poor man.
always somewhere.
um, but yeah, I think it could be interesting. At the very least, it could be a decent action show. It's very bloody, which is almost refreshing to an
Yes.
extent. Sort of forgetting that people bleed a bit in shows. Takes me back to sort of first watching
yeah.
Berserk or reading Berserk, just seeing
Yeah.
these characters,
It was
getting
like
lost in the battle
fountains of blood.
and fountains of blood and.
Just fountains spraying out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I also saw just the PV for Drifters, which I thought I was still a very bit cautious about because like Hellsing Ultimate was not really my thing, and I watched it as a marathon with a lot of friends of mine, and it just all turned into a lot of suffering for all of us.
I don't know. This
Because
could turn out the same way. I haven't read it at all. It's got a really good style to it, like obviously from
I love the style.
the same guy's housing. It's got its own identity and its own sort of thing, which is always a bonus unto itself. And it's also got pretty good action directing. It's got I forget his name, the guy the guy who directed Jojo. So he knows how to, with these really dynamic sword movements and stuff, like even the opening scene, and just like we said in the opening scene of the OVA, the guy just gets like loaded full of arrows and jumping through and like it. I don't know. It's got a bit of the same battle strategy as well, where everything is a component. If a gun is thrown down in a scene, it follows that rule where the gun is a part of the fight. It's not just a piece of whatever to be put back in the scenery or forgotten for later on. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's sort of now I'm a bit more happy about the series. I think it starts in autumn now, does it?
Yeah.
Or
from memory, it does. It starts up next season. Whether many people check it out or not, with everything else big that's airing next season, we'll have to see.
yeah, but while we are on the autumn season, like I'm very much looking forward to All Out, the
Rugby
Is that
anime.
the rugby one?
Yeah.
the rugby anime, just because it also has like these Superman touches.
Yeah.
Because I
like how it's
I-
mixed in the like pretty boy aesthetic along with the manly aesthetic. I like it.
yeah, it's a wonderful mix. It reminded me a lot of the old Baki anime. If someone
Oh, yeah,
has
yeah.
watched
Yeah,
it. So just from the way the faces are drawn, so sort of it reminded me a lot of that. And I think I would just read just like the first few chapters of the manga. It is based on a manga, and it also has this very lovely feeling of sports anime behind it, and sort of everybody's like very like sort of super manly, but also in this sort of sports emotional thing. So it's hard to describe, but it's a perfect amalgamation of both, I would say. So I'm very much looking forward to
Oh,
this.
I'll check it out.
Well, I'm hit and miss with sports anime. I do always
Yeah.
attempt to try them because I'm never one to write off a genre. But I tried Days at the start of the season, and I couldn't after a couple of episodes.
Yeah.
But All Out,
I would recommend Haikyuu if you want to.
that
Like this was my sort of entry point. Before that, I only read Eye Shield 21, which was magnificent. I can only recommend the manga because it's by the same mangaka as the One Punch Man remake. It's like Murata.
yeah.
Right.
And his art is just mwah, it's beautiful. And yeah, sort of if you want to get into sports, I would either say watch the Haikyuu anime or read Eye Shield 21.
I've watched sports shows in the past. Like I've had a good time with like
Okay.
Hajime no Ippo and Ashita no
Oh,
Joe,
yeah.
both
Oh, yeah.
boxing shows.
Yeah, no,
Oddly.
saying most of the shows I
Yes.
go into are boxing.
Yeah. No, but All Out, I feel like I could get a pretty decent connection to. I never played rugby, but anyone who knows anything about rugby can tell you New Zealand's all about it. So I know a decent.
yeah.
Same here. It's pretty massive.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel I could get to enjoy it because I know how the games work pretty decently. The day they make a rowing anime, I'll be 100% on board. But I doubt that'll happen because that's a lot of early mornings and feeling terrible unless action races are about 10 minutes after 6 months of training. I don't think that'd make the most interesting show. Could make an interesting psychological story, but that's for another day.
Yeah.
So if you want something unusual as well, we have this season's Cheerdanchi. I don't know if you've ever
That's
seen
the
this one.
cheerleading one, isn't it?
Yeah, the male cheerleading.
Male cheerleaders.
Exactly. It's sort of, I only watched I think like 3 or 4 episodes, but I had a lot of fun with it, just because male cheerleading is all about acrobatics, just doing flips and stuff, and just cheering on your team. Sort of, it has nothing to do with pom poms and stuff, but they also in the show itself just fight this stereotype, and it just becomes just this whole crew of people where you think to yourself, well, who joins a male cheerleading team? And it's just these 2 childhood friends, then just one super stern guy who's the best thing ever, who takes everything way too seriously, joins the group. Then one sort of very big guy who said, yeah, I never did sports before, but this sounds interesting, and he just becomes this sort of support guy who throws the other one up. And sort of it's sort of a very like sort of cozy sort of friendship show that I did never expect to be, just from the idea of, well, it's male cheerleaders, and I think, well, I have no clue what this is about, and then the show turned out to be good.
Yeah, I've been meaning to check it out at some point in the future. My seasonal list was a little bit full, and I was having enough trouble keeping up with what I was keeping up with for me to sort of want to do it. But another couple of sports shows next season as well that I'm looking to check out. One is Yuri on Ice, which it looks beautiful at the very least, and the other one is Tiger Mask, which is a wrestling anime with a very old aesthetic about it, which could be nice. There were some old Tiger Mask OVAs that I haven't seen yet, and I might just have to track them down before next season starts. But like, I don't know. It looks like it could be a bit of fun as well.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, I think just the idea of having a wrestling anime just sounds very appealing. Just the amount of hype that would go into it. Just, I really love it. I only saw from the original Tiger Mask the opening, and it already looks so beautiful, just with these very just stylized pencil graphite animation style. And I think for being like nearly 30 years old, it still looks very, very good.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited to see that as I don't know, it's a sequel reboot.
I don't know.
Well, nobody knows. Well, but I'm also very much looking
I'm sure there won't
forward
be
to it.
too much that you need to know beforehand. It looks.
Yeah, so it's probably something like, I would say something Jojo-like, or
maybe
sort of another entry point. Because I don't think they assume that a lot of people just have seen the 30 years ago show.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you also said Yuri on Ice. I think just the animation in itself just looks beautiful.
I've been advocating for MAPPA for a long time now. And it hasn't been until recently where people have actually sort of started noticing what they can do. Even though a lot of the shows come off at the end feeling very flat, possibly story-wise.
Yeah, no, I'd
They
agree with that.
definitely
Yeah.
have very good, like they have very good in-house staff that work on their shows, and they don't have like don't have none of the shows feel visually the same. Each one
Yeah.
feels unique unto its own right.
Well, like with despite my dislike for the second half of it, Terror and Resonance, that
Yeah,
show is amazing in terms of its visuals.
but
It's
then
just
like
stunning.
even like just from there, like the visuals going back to say, God, what's it called? Kids on the Slope, and just how the
Oh
focus and
yeah, yeah.
precision and playing
Oh
the
yeah.
instruments and that, or just the fun like wackiness you have of Punchline.
Yeah.
Even they're all shows with like very decent, pretty substantial flaws in themselves, but they each have their own personality. None of the shows feel the same.
Yeah.
Even Days, the season, which I don't, not the biggest fan of, it has its own personal visual style to it, which is great.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So we're also approaching like our 60-minute mark. But yeah, so sort of any final words if you want to.
I don't know.
Not currently. I've sort of gotten lost up in the talk a little bit, so I hope everything I said made sense.
It made sense, of course. Like, no, I really much enjoyed this.
Yeah, no, it's fun.
So, yeah, we didn't have our fourth guy of the round here, Boris, who will hopefully join us in the next episode. And yeah, so I think it was the first episode of GARcast.
We'll find our feet. We'll
Yeah.
take strides from here.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Of course. Yeah, so this has been Round. This was Tom.
Hello. Thanks for joining us.
And Alastair.
Thanks for listening.
And myself, Elena. And hopefully join you in our next episode. And, well, have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.